Okay, everyone, welcome um, to the practice tonight. For those of you who are new, welcome into the space. This is a guided practice, so I would just be offering instructions to help you move through, um, the practice tonight. As always, there is a standard kind of a practice text that we can find on the Bhumi Sparsha website or my website at lamarod.com. And that's the text that you can use. That's the text that I created in which we um, just started practicing. And one day we'll go back to that text. I'm going to teach that text again. But it's a really great way to start. It's much more complex. I think it's that kind of that practice is something that is a little easier to move through. Also, there's a guided video that goes along with that too that you can find on my website as well. So you can actually just listen to me move you through that text. But in this space tonight, we just kind of sit and just work to bring awareness to basically where we're hurting, right? And in the spirit of the Medicine Buddha tradition, learning how to really move deep into these experiences that we're having, both mental and physical. So let's begin again with, if you have prayer requests or aspirations that you're wanting us to hold as a community, and for me and all of us actually to hold in our practice, go ahead and start placing those right and just in the chat there. Also, you see an ask a question function, so you can, any questions that come up for you, just go ahead and put those in the question box. And you may find that probably at the bottom of your screen as well. It just says ask a question, and you just put your questions there. So if there's questions for me to answer, put those there instead of perhaps in the main chat. Okay. And also, of course, as usual, welcome back to everyone who's been joining us for a bit now. So we originally started the group as a way for us to hold space at the very beginning of the quarantine, and so we just continue. We'll continue beyond quarantine and beyond. So again, any prayer requests or anything. In the near future, I will have just a separate email account set up for anyone who's interested in offering prayers, and I will offer those prayers in my private practice as well. So that will be a secondary thing that people will be able to do in a bit as we maybe kind of get closer to the spring, I think. So yeah, go ahead and start just offering prayer requests. I know there have been some updates around some of the folks we've been praying for, which is really wonderful to hear that. I do believe in the power of prayer. And honestly, in my practice, I couldn't be here. I wouldn't be here without really the practice of prayer. And we practice prayer in many different ways in this space. Oh, I forgot to turn on my lights. I'm working on adjusting the background here. This is like a space that I carved out. I mean, of course it's not a huge deal, but I love the feeling of having lights around me, rainbow lights. Anyhow, as I was saying, what was I saying? I was saying that prayer for me has been very important. I just think if you really want to see things happen in life, in your relationships, we have to really start embracing the practice of prayer. And I'm developing a course on grieving um, that will probably start this summer because summer's a great time, to start working on grief. But in that course, they'll offer, and everyone will know about it. Don't worry. But I want to just have some sections in there about prayer and just like really get into that, get into this practice. Particularly, what do we mean by prayer in tantric traditions in general? What does that mean? You know, and of course, we've gone through this quite a bit in our practice together over. I guess we started this space maybe March, no, maybe April last year. So we're coming up to our 1 year, kind of mark of this Monday night group. But yeah, so like prayer, opening, vulnerability, articulating what we're needing and hoping to see, and for me, prayer is also about hope. I know that if you're really into Buddhist traditions, that like we don't talk about prayer and we don't talk about hope so much, but I'm kind of reclaiming that, for my practice, because hope has been incredibly important for me, for my family, for my community, for my ancestors. For me, hope is based on impermanence, right? So if we believe in impermanence, then we also have to believe that things change. For me, that's hope. Hope is just the belief that things will change. And I think that it's okay to embrace hope in the practice. Like I hope for the end to all disease, which is part of that, of Medicine Buddha's aspirations, right? All these aspirations that he accumulated over various lifetimes, many different lifetimes. Of course, one of those is that people be free from disease. And that's also my prayer and my hope. And also that hoping helps me to work in the present moment for the end of disease and the end of violence, the end of systems of violence in particular. But again, as I just kind of subtly pointed out, you have to do more than hope, right? Hoping is important and praying is important. You have to do that, but you also have to work. It's when I spent a really brief moment in my early 20s when I had left the church and was doing this intense activism as a Catholic worker, ish person, and then I came out of a lot of struggle around depression, and coming out of that tailwind of depression, I came back into Christianity and was like going to church and Bible study, and I was in, gospel choir because I'm a singer. I love gospel, I foresee myself going back and joining a gospel choir soon, once we're able to get back together and gather. But came back into the church, into Christianity, and was really like much more interested in prayer in a way that I hadn't been ever in my life, and one of the things I learned in that brief period of coming into Christianity in a different way was that, as we pray, God gives us the tools, right? So it doesn't always mean that we pray and God, just clears everything, like just makes everything happen. But what I learned from my teachers back then that I was with is that we pray and God, often sends us or lets us begin to see the tools that we needed in order to bring about, what we were aspiring for, what we were praying for, and to be watchful for how that clarity was being offered to us, and that was one of the ways God spoke to us. You know, um, that God speaks through clarity. God speaks through allowing us to see for ourselves often what we need to do. And not that like there aren't ways in which things just happen. Of course, things just happen. But we also have to be very watchful around the ways in which we're given the tools that we need in order to make things work out. And I just, I know that you didn't come here for, evangelical hour. I have been, I, I've been called a practitioner of evangelical Buddhism. Um, but I think it's so similar just to take that and apply it to tantric prayers. Like, yeah, we're praying for clarity. We're praying to see things, right? We're moving energy in prayer. If we think of God as energy, then we're leaning into that energy, beginning to shift energy around. I do see and relate to God as energy, right? So I am evoking that energy to move, and that moving begins to impact other things because we're still working within the law of interrelatedness, interconnectedness. So what I do will create an effect. It will create an impact, and things begin to shift and get moved around. Maybe hearing this when I was a young person coming through church, maybe this would have been helpful for me to understand that God wasn't this old white guy sitting in heaven, who hated, gay people, and trans people, right? Who hated anyone trying to be different. I think this would have been helpful for me for someone to tell me that as a young person. Um, but we all have to come from somewhere. So we come from somewhere, as we say all the time in church, too. It's like, or as Jill Scott saying, we've all had to swim up the stream. Yes. Oh my God, Jill Scott. Anyhow, let me get going before I turn down that path of the greatest R&B and soul albums in my lifetime. Okay. So I want to begin with, for those of you new, I'm going to begin by offering prayers that the community has offered, and then we'll move into our practice, a guided practice. I like to start with different things all the time, but eventually I like to move a little bit through the breath. If the breath is not working for you or accessible or it's bringing up things, just please bypass that practice, right? And turn your attention to something a little more stable for you. And then we'll get into the main part of the practice, which is, some guided visualization. I never know what's going to happen until I get there. And then we'll move into our mantra. The mantras will appear in the chat box when the time comes. We're going to probably do 2 mantras. The evoking mantra, calling Medicine Buddha into the space, which is Om Minla Sange Kino Soha, which just means that, which translates into Medicine Buddha, please think of me, please remember me. That's a mantra that I created. But there's a tradition of calling deities, saints, teachers into your practice space by using the honorific word, Tibetan word kino. So I didn't make up this whole idea, but I did assemble that mantra, particularly for Medicine Buddha. And then the traditional mantra for Medicine Buddha, Teata, Bekense, Maha Bekense, Rasa Sulungate Soha, which will be the main mantra that really we begin to mingle our minds with that of the deity, and to say that we are the deity, and particularly in Vajrayana, once we move into Vajrayana practice, the Vajrayana wing of Tantric traditions. In Vajrayana, we are the deity, right? The essence of Medicine Buddha is the same as our essence, or the essence of our own mind. So we are medicine Buddha. So when we become medicine Buddha in different ways, which we may or may not tonight in the practice, we say that we're faking it, but we're actually trying to move closer to a real experience of being the deity, right? When we become the deity, we become our most authentic self. The deity is open, vulnerable, spacious, clear, awakened. That's who we are, and in Buddhism, we're trying to reconnect because we forgot that. Right? We have forgotten who we are because of these, I don't want to get so technical, but I'll just say because of these ways of thinking, these narratives, we have lost connection to the clarity, the openness of our own experiences, right? And so in Dharma, we're trying to get back to that. In Buddhism, we're trying to get back to that through these profound practices that are helping us to cut through narratives and beliefs and hate, desire, the poisons, as we say, cutting through these poisons, which are just really distracting us from the essence of everything. Once we touch into the essence of one thing, we touch into the essence of everything, right? So it doesn't matter what that thing is. And there are so many stories in Vajrayana of these practitioners who just meditate on, just some inanimate object, something super like a ring, like a piece of jewelry, or a flame, or sound, right? They just meditate. They get this practice. They get what we call sadhana. We're doing sadhana, right? Which is just ritualistic practice, guided, ritualistic, organized practice that takes us from ambiguity to clarity, right? That's what the sadhana is. But these stories of people just meditating on inanimate objects, mundane objects, and then understanding the nature of that object and how the nature of that object opens the door to the nature of everything. Peering into the nature of anything, like this glass of tea that I have here, which I haven't drank. My mouth is getting a little dry. This glass of tea, once I can meditate on this, right? I can use this as an anchor and rest my attention on this anchor and then go through higher forms of practice like Mahamudra, Dzogchen, right? And then begin to reflect on the emptiness, the spaciousness of this glass, asking what this glass really is. Like, what is glass, right? What is heat? What is water? What is tea? And I get deeper and deeper into that. And I begin to move into a relationship with the space, emptiness, and energetic expression of this glass. And then that's the breaking open of this glass, because this glass represents everything, including my mind. So I turn the key here, it opens up the door of everything. So it doesn't matter what we're meditating on, right? Because in Mahamudra, the system of Mahamudra, which I know some of you are new, Mahamudra is just a system of, I say a philosophical system of meditation that talks about the emptiness of things. And Mahamudra starts with mindfulness, and it moves through kind of open awareness practice, and then it moves into a meditation of emptiness. Right? But in Mahamudra teaches us that, one thing represents everything. This glass of tea the glass of this tea is the same nature as a box, as sound, as touch, as my body, as my mind. It's the same thing, right? And the brilliant thing about this philosophy is that I can just rest my attention on something that feels accessible for me. For some of us, we just can't do emptiness as an anchor, right? That's how I was trained. I was trained, the best anchor is emptiness, resting our attention, rather our awareness within emptiness itself, which is formless, is spacious, is open, right? Some of us, it takes a lot of work to get there, but some of us can rest our minds on an inanimate object or a crystal. You can rest your mind on a crystal. Crystals are wonderful, because we often say that crystals, represent the clarity, openness, spaciousness of the mind, right? So you can mingle your awareness within the spaciousness, the clarity of this crystal, and that can be super, super beneficial as well. I would call this meditating on a sacred object. I see crystals as sacred and conscious as well, conscious things that are intelligent and that can communicate as well. And they offer themselves as vessels, as tools for us to awaken in different ways. Okay, so enough of that. I've talked too much. Let's get into practice. So I want to begin by making sure, go ahead and put your prayer requests if you haven't done so already. Questions go into the question box as we begin. But as we begin, I just invite you to come into a position that feels appropriate for our practice. We're going to do about 30 minutes of practice, which is a good chunk of practice. And in your space you're practicing in, I invite you to reflect on different kinds of beings and inviting those beings into your space. So all your teachers and guides and mentors and the communities that you love and who are loving you in return. Inviting whatever ancestors feel appropriate for you. Again, ancestors that are here to help us, to support us, inviting those ancestors as well. And inviting, any other benefactors, guides, teachers, to angels, saints, Buddhas, bodhisattvas, deities, into the space. Any one of those, any of those beings who are part of your liberation work, your healing work. And you can just open your mind and say, any being who's trying to help in my healing, who's loving me, who's taking care of me, and who wants me to be well, and who also wants those that I'm praying for and loving around me to be well. Just open your mind and saying, I invite you here. I don't know who you are, but as long as you're helping and loving, you have a place here. If you're not helping, do not come. And be really strict like that. If you're not here to help, do not approach the sacred space that I'm creating. And just feeling those beings begin to enter into the space and to just kind of settle into your space around you. I want to begin with our mantra of inviting Medicine Buddha into the space. Om Minla Sangye Kino Soha. Again, Medicine Buddha, please think of me. Right? The Kino can be translated in any way that feels really powerful for you. Like for me, it's sometimes Medicine Buddha, please remember me. Or Medicine Buddha, please hold me. Or Medicine Buddha, please heal me. Let that word Kino transform into what you need it to be tonight. Transforming it into a verb or an action phrase that meet your needs in this moment. If you need Medicine Buddha to hold you, then it becomes Medicine Buddha hold me. If you want Medicine Buddha just to think of you, it becomes Medicine Buddha think of me. Okay, so let's begin the chant. Om Mila Sangye Kino Soha. You may listen along or chant with me. We'll do it a few times. Om Mila Sangye Kino Soha. 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 And opening our minds, opening our hearts, and just maybe sensing in whatever ways appropriate how certain energies are beginning to collect around you now. I wonder if you can also experience being held by these energies. And this can be your practice tonight, just sitting and just opening our minds, opening our hearts, and just exploring energy around us and allowing that energy to take care of us. So if we're feeling tired, what would it be like to offer that fatigue into this energy that's gathered around you? If you're angry, can you offer this anger to be held and tended to by the energy around you? And in this energy is also the expression of the enlightened mind, the enlightened essence of Medicine Buddha. As we begin offering our prayers tonight, as we're listening to the prayer requests of other members of the space and as well as our prayer requests, we just imagine that as each prayer request is offered, we connect to the aspirational energy of the prayer, the needs of that prayer, the longing, the desire of that prayer for this request, this aspiration to actually come about. Like when we connect to that energy of the prayer, the need, the desire for something to happen, then we add energy to that aspiration. But we have to allow ourselves to feel the needs. And maybe it's a prayer request that you don't agree with. That's fine. You don't have to get involved. you know. But in other cases, for the most part, we're just allowing ourselves to feel into this desire, adding our own desire for someone to be well, for someone to be taken care of, so for someone to have support as they move into the spirit world. And then once we connect to that, we offer energetically the energy of this prayer into the space around us that's being held and populated by our benefactors and contained by the energy of Medicine Buddha. Okay. So on behalf of this community and all those who've gathered tonight. And on behalf of those who couldn't be here tonight, I offer these prayers that we all may touch into the energy of the prayer, the need and the desire, adding our own needs and well wishes, and then offering everything into the space around us, into this energy, into the essence of these beings, so they may continue to work on our behalf to make things happen, to respond to the energy of each prayer in whatever way is appropriate. So to all beings, all beings, deities, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Dharma protectors, saints, angels, guardian spirits, ancestors, to all our lineages, to the earth, to the water, air, to fire, to spirit, to all the caretakers of this land that we're practicing and praying on. And to the essence of reality itself, I offer these prayers. We continue to pray for my relationship with my mom, who has dementia. We continue to pray for Lisa Smith, who passed last Tuesday, on February 2nd. Tana Gottlieb, who died on the 4th. For both young women in their mid-30s. May they have support as they continue to move through these early stages of the spirit world. We pray for myself. I'm very sad about these losses, and for the mothers who are good friends of mine. And we pray for their mothers as well, and for all of those who are grieving. We continue to pray. I'm grateful for the support in my mental health journey and to find the right medication. I've been losing my mind from recent events, also bring up older events, and I'm now navigating the minefield of side effects. We pray for support, for guidance as well. That you have everything that you need as you navigate these obstacles. We offer prayers for the unhoused as frigid temperatures continue across the country. We pray for Abby's health and for the nurses, Helen and Rose. We continue to pray for Zach to find his way. We offer prayers for the healing of my sister's 4th-degree tear during childbirth of her second child. Prayer requests for courage and trust in myself as I move through a transition in a relationship that's bringing up some grief and fear. I want to be able to love this person and love myself, and I think I need support as I live in this in-between in my relationship. Prayers for my father, Philip Drew Benson, Sr., who is 3 years an ancestor today. Prayers to my family, his descendants who are missing him and grieving separately this year, on top of all the other grief at this time. And for all who have been holding grief, to know we are never alone. Prayers for Nick, who died recently after a catastrophic accident last spring, and for his children and his wife and the loved ones he leaves behind. We pray for Yolanda that she gets the housing and care and support that she needs. I pray for Laura, whose birthday is today and wants to stay in the USA but does not have a legal way to do this. Please help. Prayers for everyone struggling with mental health during this time of prolonged uncertainty, isolation, and stress. Prayers for myself and others who feel lost in these times. We pray for the continued presence of queer joy and chosen family in my life and for queer community everywhere. Prayers for my mother who is struggling to hold and metabolize her own trauma. Prayers for my friend Lindsay who is having difficulties with work and in her marriage. Prayers to be and to be able to see what feels unbearable to see from the past. Prayers for a greater understanding about my life's purpose. Prayers for persons engaged with and through the Black Maternal Health Omnibus Act, introduced in the House of Representatives today. Prayers for peace to all emotionally, mentally, the world, our inner restlessness. Prayers for the continued recovery of my cat. Prayers to fulfill God's will for my life with fearlessness, peace, and resolve. Prayers that I find a way to accept my family, let go of how I think things should look, and how to best show up for them, even if it means to distance. Prayers for my dad struggling with chronic kidney disease who may need dialysis in the near future. Prayers for Bria and Becky, pregnancy and work, for the Asian communities in the Bay experiencing violence and murder, for self-clarity, joy on upcoming move and work creation. Prayers for my lovely friend who is battling substance abuse and continues to struggle with their own darkness, for their beautiful heart and deep being. Prayers for my friend Jessica and prayer and wishes for her to find true happiness. Prayers for those struggling with suicidality. May we be held. May we experience spaciousness. May we experience liberation. Prayers for Salvatore, who just passed on into his family, grieving this complicated loss. Prayers for Seymour, who died several days ago, and for his wife and family who survived him. Prayers for my friend who is struggling in her relationship, and prayers that she receives the support and care she needs and deserves to strengthen her agency and heart space. May all sentient beings have everything that they need. We continue to pray for all beings right now who feel lost, distant, lonely. We pray for all beings that they get everything that they need in order to be well and happy and connected. In the spirit of the Medicine Buddha tradition, directly from the Medicine Buddha tradition, we pray that all beings be safe and free and happy and well. So letting all of these prayers be offered into this immense field of benefactors around us. Letting our benefactors now move into shifting energy within the experiences of those we've prayed for, and to shift that energy within our experience. As we pray for others, we are also praying for ourselves. That what we pray for is energy that will return to us in the future. So letting go, offering these prayers to our benefactors around us. And shifting our attention now back to our experience, beginning with the breath. Just noticing the in-breath and the out-breath. And if this is accessible for you, allowing the breath to slow down, to lengthen, to deepen. Taking our time to inhale, taking our time to exhale, lengthening the breaths. As we inhale, imagine inhaling into some part of our experience, be it the mind or the body, where we feel the suffering in whatever way it's arising, be it sadness or sorrow, grief, or another kind of physical sensation related to that. But breathing into these experiences, imagining that the in-breath begins to dissolve these experiences of suffering, and as we exhale, we breathe out that energy. And that energy that we breathe out also begins to our benefactors around us, and they will hold and purify whatever energy that we release that we do not need anymore. So inhaling into the discomfort, dissolving, letting it go. And I'm going to add just another piece to this practice now. And this is optional. But as we're inhaling into this discomfort, as you inhale, I want you to chant in your head the syllable So as you're breathing in, you're chanting So breathing in, but it's a mental thing. So as you inhale in, chanting taking a short breath, chanting in your mind. And then as you release that breath and that energy, chanting Hong in your mind. So chanting it, breathing in, holding the breath just for a second, then Hong as you breathe out. These syllables, what we call seed syllables, begin to energize these different parts of the breath. So that this enhances this kind of letting go and moving through difficult energy. Okay, so it's practicing this for another couple of moments. Ah, hum. On the out breath with hum, really releasing, really letting go, like really emptying out as much as you can. Okay. Just a few more breaths. So when you're ready, coming back to just a breath that feels natural for you. Now turning our attention back to our benefactors around us, we begin to imagine that these beings begin to radiate the energy of care around us. And to connect to that energy, you can reflect on the last time you felt deeply cared by something or someone. And imagine that that is the same energy that your benefactors around you are beginning to radiate directly towards you, as if you're just kind of sitting. You've been sitting out on a cold day and the sun shines and the sun breaks open and that warmth begins to radiate down, warming us up. So our benefactors are the sun, and we begin to deeply drink in this warmth of care from the sun of our benefactors. Letting our mind fill with warmth and light, letting our bodies fill with warmth and light. And doing both, filling with warmth and filling with light as well. And as we imagine that our bodies and minds are filling with this radiance of light, I also want you to imagine that you're sharing this light with all the beings we're praying for that have entered into the spirit world of the Bardo, those beings who are transitioning from this realm to the next. Imagining that this light that's growing inside of our experience is the same light that begins to illuminate the darkness that they experience as they transition through the disembodied world. And as we begin our mantra practice, just allowing ourselves to be filled with this light and warmth, radiating this into the experiences of those who have passed on, illuminating their way, and just allowing ourselves to be cared for by this radiance of care. So, Teata, Baconze, Baconze, Maha Baconze, Ratsa, Sumung, Gate, Soha, O, O, Teata, Baconze, Baconze, Ma Baconze, Ransa sumunga te soa. I'm going to add another component tonight. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ransa sumunga te soa. Te ata, sorry. O te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, ranza sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, 수만가제 소아 대야자 베겐세 마베겐세 라자 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 수만가제 소아 Teata Begenze Begenze Maha Begenze Razusumungate Soa Teata Begenze Begenze Maha Begenze Razusumungate Soa Teata Begenze Begenze Maha Begenze Rasa Sumangate Soha. And turning our attention back to the breath. Returning back to our three syllables Hum. As we move through just a few more breaths, we begin to imagine that we are breathing on behalf of all beings right now who are struggling to breathe. Transforming our breath into an enlightened collective breath through the syllables of Hum, chanting Hum in our minds as we inhale, as we hold the breath, and Hum as we exhale. Allowing ourselves to come back to a natural breath. Shifting our attention back to our benefactors around us, thanking them for their support, their love, their guidance, offering another prayer that they work always to benefit all beings, to usher all of us towards liberation as quickly as possible. And another prayer I offer on behalf of all of those gathered here in this space today, in this moment, that you yourself have everything that you need in order to be well, that you have what you need to do the work of grieving, to do the work of loving, expressing compassion, to do the work of benefiting others, and that you may be filled with the love of the deity as you do this work to benefit others. We imagine that our benefactors return back to where they came from to be with us. We come back into the space and we move into the recitation of Shanti Deva's prayer. beginning to engender and deeply awaken this state of deep consciousness and wakefulness to become whatever beings need in order to guide them towards liberation. And we begin, may I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge for those, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements, such as earth, may I always support the life of all boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, may I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all the sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. Thank you all so much for your practice today. Um, I'm just gonna see there's just two questions here that um, I was gonna take a look at. How do you square your beliefs around hope with Pema Chodron's idea that we must give up hope and embrace groundlessness? Oh, I don't. I just believe in hope. So, um, I mean, there's always groundlessness, but when you're trying to survive the world and life, I think groundlessness isn't the first teaching you move into. I think hoping that impermanence is actually real is actually where you want to go and take up space. Um, the teachings, the teachings often in mainstream kind of Buddhist converts, white Buddhist spaces often come from the direction of the ultimate instead of coming up from the relative. And so that's going to make a very different kind of teaching for all of us. So my teachings come from the relative to meet the ultimate instead of starting from the ultimate, because I have no choice because I'm Black and queer and I've had to move through the struggle of the relative to get to the teachings, right? Whiteness creates a different kind of Dharma teaching that often displaces the Dharma from real struggle in life. And that's just kind of how it is, right? Again, I know I get accused of this. I'm not saying that white identified folks don't struggle, but that's a different reality for folks who were born into a world where they were just at. I was a victim of racism as soon as I was conceived because of the racist system of healthcare for Black women. I was already impacted by racism well before I came into the world, you know. So I was dealing with racism as I was developing in my mother's body, you know. So I haven't gotten a choice to deal with racism or not to deal with racism, right? I've had to deal with that, and having to deal with a particular social issue that I can't avoid, that has often been a root of violence for people like me. Then my dharma has had to come into a direct relationship to what it means to be in this one, this thinking of blackness in particular, this identity location. My dharma has had to emerge out of struggle, not out of comfort. So when a dharma emerges out of struggle, then there are things that we're gonna hold on to and embrace, and one of those things is hope. You can embrace groundlessness, as well. I mean, that's all the teaching, but I don't think that like it has to be either or either. I think it can be both. Um, every week we were saying the mantra, my cats join me and purrs on my lap. And this is yes, is this normal? Are animals connected? Yeah, of course. I mean, animals sense positive energy. This mantra is a transmission of positive energy. Absolutely. Um, that's these mantras that have been chanted like this for centuries, in a pure way, they draw energy. They draw really good energy into the space. And beings pick up on that. You may not know. Again, you don't know. We can hear a mantra. Like I can hear a mantra I've never heard before, but I can still feel the positive. I listen to kirtan, and I listen to these kirtan mantras. I'm like, I don't know what they're saying, but like I know that I love to listen to them. You know, um, I know that like when I'm in India, I go and I sit and practice and sing and pray in temples. Have no idea what's being said, but I'm there because the energy draws me into that. Um, yeah. Um, and I know a lot of people, practitioners who, if they have pets, if they leave and go somewhere, and they put on mantras for the pets. And there are actually mantras specifically, well, at least in my lineage, that we use for animals. I'll try to think about that, trying to figure out where those are. Mantras for animals. I know we've done it before. Okay. Um, let's see. But always know, I just want to go back to the first question, premature question. It's like we have to understand that the Dharma is being offered through the lenses and the life experiences of teachers. It's like, yeah, we say, oh, pure Dharma, but, pure Dharma is colored by where we've been, you know. Um, my Dharma was deepened when I started, when I developed a relationship or became friends with Reverend Angel. And she was the first teacher, like, that was like the Dharma of like, the social Dharma. I was like, oh, that's really, because all of my teachers had been Tibetan or white, and then you get with a teacher that's like, and then there's this Dharma of the collective, of the relative, that for many of us who struggle to be well, we have to go through the Dharma of the door of struggle. So my Dharma comes out of struggle. It comes out of having to survive this body, in a relative world, right? Um, and having to always remember identities, because these are identities that I have to navigate in order to be alive. Right? I I have to remember that I'm black, right? When I go to the doctor, I have to remember that because I am perceived differently by doctors in terms of pain and sickness. I have to remember being Black walking down the sidewalk, right? I have to remember that in the store. Like, I have to remember that driving down a highway. Like, I have to remember that and be mindful of what Blackness communicates to those who see Blackness as being other and less than and devalued, and what those implications are in terms of the well-being of my life. You know, so that's where my dharma comes from. It's saying, yeah, and also I am Black in a world. It doesn't matter if I identify as something else, I'm still read as Black. And so I need to show up to that and bring my dharma to negotiate that pressure. You know, as Whitney Houston said, it's not right, but it's okay. Because I'm still happy. What do you mean the relative world? How do you bridge living in the world of the relative and the world of the other world? Or you're living in both worlds at the same time. It's not about bridging anything. You don't have to bridge anything. You're already doing it. We struggle with this belief that we're not nonlinear. We are nonlinear beings. And so instead of saying, how do I do both of these? How about saying, well, I'm already doing it. So how do I show up to that? We're living both the relative and the ultimate together in this moment. And it's not as hard as you think to wake up to that. But again, as we said earlier, it's like, how do I begin to relate to the essence of everything as I'm moving through the world, right? So again, let's go back. I walk down the street, I'm Black, right? I'm read as someone, as being othered, as being devalued, right? I have to be conscious of that. Yeah, I'm conscious of that. But also know that the essence of all of this is just like an illusion. So that thought that, oh, this isn't really happening, is actually something that creates spaciousness, that allows me to walk down a sidewalk without being lost in the paranoia of someone calling the cops on me because I'm Black, walking through a neighborhood. And in my neighborhood, on my street, I'm one of 2 Black people living on my street. Fortunately, I know a lot of people already on the streets, and I do that on purpose. I introduce myself to my neighbors on purpose because I want them to know who I am. So they don't randomly look out their windows one day and say, who's this Black guy walking through the street? Because we've been hearing that there's burglaries happening. Who's this guy? What should we do? I want them to know who I am. That is a survival technique that many people like me use. And you may not even know it. There are Black people introducing themselves to you, not because they want to be your friend, but because they want you to know them. So you don't end up calling the cops on them in the future for something. It's called survival. And that's where my dharma comes from. Yeah, I have to do that. I have to do that. I have to assume that I'm starting with a deficit. I'm starting within a deficit in my relationships with people, particularly white people. I have to assume that you're already thinking negatively about me, because that's the way that I survive. Again, I'm still quite happy. I'm still grateful. I choose, if I got a choice one day to be something other than I am, I wouldn't choose to be anything else because I'm happy. I love this. I love queerness and Blackness and all the, and everything else I come from. I love it. When I say I love it, I see the inherent essence of it. I see the ways in which it has helped me to experience a deep kind of settledness and happiness in this life, regardless of the systems of violence and the systems of discrimination that have been created, which is just a delusion. All this is just a delusion that people hold in their practice. That delusion is not my work. That's not my work. Other people's delusion is my work. Even if other people's delusion is killing me, it's still not my work. I can't, your delusion is your delusion. What I have to do is strategize against that delusion. And And the ways that I strategize against it is through wisdom and compassion. The wisdom says I'm going to be very smart and, and I'm going to do things that will help me to survive, right? And the compassion is the thing that I use to resist the hate of returning the hate back to people who offer hate to me because of no other reason, because I'm Black or queer or fat or fabulous. It doesn't matter. Like people just don't like you for all various reasons, right? It's always really fun. This is always really fun to talk about too. Identity isn't something we have to avoid. Like again, it's like people avoid identity because they haven't done the work to unpack the meaning of that identity and the relative. Like you haven't done the work to understand identity. As I talk about in Love and Rage, identity is a drag. I mean, it's a ball. Was a ball, right? And it's drag, right? We're at the drag, we're at the ball, like in Pose and Paris is Burning, that kind of ball, the drag ball. And we're all just performing, right? And at some point, you have to realize that, yeah, this is just a performance. Particularly at the moment of death, you have to realize, okay, this is performance. I need to let this go. So I'm moving into a disembodied state beyond the body. Of course, we have in the spirit realm, we form, mental bodies that just reflect our previous bodies because that's what we know. But really, the practice should be to let go of all forms and into the formless at the moment of death. Um, okay, so thank you, everyone. I know we went a little longer. Um, can you suggest where we can find mantras chanting to listen to? I'm like, yeah, just like I go just do like YouTube. There's so many teachers doing mantras on YouTube. I find so many really wonderful mantras on YouTube. There are different like recordings on like Spotify and Apple Music, whatever you may have. I'm just doing a search. Really, I find a lot of great sacred music just searching. So anywho, this is recorded. Come back and watch it at any time. This is the great thing about being here. Please join us again. I'll be giving the Wednesday night talk at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Bhumi Sparsha this week and next week. So join us here. Again, go to bhumisparsha.org for information on how to join us Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Excuse me. All right. Thank you, everyone. Please be well. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.